Why are we, empaths, such a succulent, exquisite delicacy for narcissists? Why are we magnet for abusers and narcissistic individuals? If you are someone who tries to understand, who respects other people's emotions and opinions, who goes out of your way to keep the peace, who thinks twice or three times before speaking just to avoid hurting someone or creating conflict, and still you end up feeling confused, disrespected, hurt, and sometimes even guilty. This video is for you. Yes, you. What you are experiencing, it is not random. And it is not because there is something wrong with you. In fact, I want to start with something very important. Your empathy is not the problem. Your capacity to love is not the problem. But there are patterns. And many of those patterns, they were formed much earlier in our life. They are called attachment styles. And we will dive into those here in a minute. But before we go deeper, I want to share something with you. For more than 20 years, I worked as a teacher in the state of Florida. And later, I transitioned into clinical counseling. And throughout that journey, I have seen and witnessed something very important and clearly. There is so much pain, so much confusion, and so many people repeating and repeating the same patterns, simply because they don't have the information and we don't know what? Well, we don't know. And that is the reason why this conversation matters and matters so much. Because when we don't understand what is going on in our environment, in our lives, we tend to blame ourselves. And when we blame ourselves, the suffering deepens. And these individuals that we attract like magnets are masters manipulators, leveraging on that. So let's begin. This is the concept that explains a lot of this. Attachment styles. In simple terms, attachment styles are the way we learned to connect emotionally when we were very young. And we carry them all throughout our lives later on. And here is a visual aid I will drop it down in the description in case you would like to explore it further. There are 4 main attachment styles. We have the secure attachment that we all would love to have that attachment type, the secure one. We have the anxious attachment, the avoidant, and also we have the disorganized attachment, which is like a mixture of both avoidant and anxious. But for the sake of this video, we will focus more on the 3 insecure attachments, which are the anxious, the clingy person, the avoidant, that's the individual that usually puts up a wall, the silent treatment, the ghosting, that type of individuals, and the disorganized attachment, which is like a fusion of these both, the anxious with the avoidant. Let's start with the secure attachment. Secure attachments start when there is consistency, emotional safety, affection, validation, but many empathic individuals, we didn't grow up in that kind of environment. Instead, we grew up in environments that were strict, highly demanding, emotionally limited, focused only on achievements as the main source for recognition, where mistakes were not easily accepted. And in those environments, you learn to adapt in order to stay connected and many times to survive. In those environments, we learned to read emotions, anticipate reactions, to avoid conflict, to please others, people pleasers, to earn approval, and sadly, over time, that becomes automatic. Now, you see what is coming, right? When someone with narcissistic traits enters in our life, they recognize that isophagically. They recognize that something in us that yells kindness, empathy, the ability to understand, and our willingness to stay no matter what and even if. And this is something very important to understand. We are a rare kind of person. We are emotionally aware. We're caring. We're thoughtful. Because what happened, we learned to survive. And then here we go, overgiving, over-explaining, overstaying. Remember that little frog metaphor that explains this phenomenon that I presented in the previous video? And they prey, the perpetrators, the abuser, they prey on all this dynamic. We are even inclined to emotional naivete. Yes, we are naive to some extent, and I will dare to say to a great deal. And this is not because we lack intelligence. This is because we believe in people. We see their potential. Then we hold on hopes and that brightened future that we imagined that we will have in that relationship. And that is exactly the reason why they come back. They always come back. And that's going to be the topic for our next video. But a little advance here. They always come back because we are understanding, we are forgiving, we give second chances and third and fourth and fifth and so on. We try and try again. And for someone with narcissistic traits, we become a place where they can return to. And sadly, not necessarily because they changed, but because they know that we are still here. At the beginning, everything feels intense in a positive way. Their attention, the connection, the validation, they make us feel seen, what we didn't have back then. Are you seeing the connection? Attachment styles, empathy, narcissistic abuse. Then, with these individuals, in the beginning of the relationship or situationship, we should say there is this attention, connection, validation, but it doesn't last. Over time, things begin to shift. Criticism appears, confusion increases, distance grows, and then suddenly connection comes back again, especially if they feel threatened that we might leave. And this creates a cycle, the cycle of abuse. Idealization, devaluation, distance and reconnection. Idealization, the love bombing, the honeymoon. Devaluation, criticism, bullying, belittling. Distance, the ghosting, the wall up. Then reconnection again, which is the hoovering, like the vacuum brand. And in that cycle, you begin to think, if I do better, maybe things, they are going back the way they were in the beginning. If I make a greater effort, maybe I'm going to be able to help or fix this, my love. But there is a but here, and very big. That initial stage of that relationship, it was never meant to be. It was in reality not stable at all since the very beginning. Now, let's talk about something deeper, the trauma bond. I also have another video in the channel explaining in better details what is the trauma bond, which in a nutshell is when the pain is followed by relief. Distance is followed by closeness. Our brain begins to form an attachment. The highs are truly high, and the lows are very, very deep. And this is not a weakness, again. This is just a biology. This is neurobiology, neuroscience. Then we crave the positive intensity of the beginning, and as any drug, we also developed tolerance. And in that period of abstinence, when we start having difficulties and we start seeing the crazy making and the roller coasters of emotions, we are hit by that abstinence. Then we suffer the withdrawals. Exactly, withdrawal symptoms. And those symptoms are the ones that ultimately persuade us to stay in the abuse, even knowing that pain and agony are not only in our wake, in our past, but they are also awaiting us in our horizon. And that is exactly the cycle of abuse. All the information that you guys see throughout the video, I will drop all the links down here in the description, also for you to explore them if you want in your free time. It's very useful. It's very important to be informed. It will make the difference. It really made a difference for me in my time when I was going through this. That information, it was literally the distinction in my own experience between life and death. To be informed is also connected to happiness. What is happiness? Simply, happiness is the internal alignment between what we value, what we do, and what we allow in our lives. When those three things are aligned and connected, even the simplest days feel full of happiness, purpose, and self-respect. Listen carefully. No one ever will take advantage of you again, at least not without your awareness. This knowledge changes everything. It breaks the silence where so many people are still suffering, simply because they don't know, and we don't know, or we don't know, until clarity finally reaches us. This understanding saved my life. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. These individuals are not only masters manipulators, they are highly selective. That is why they often, I would say 99% of the time, they come back. If this resonates with you, please share it and subscribe to help the channel to spread this voice. Also, in the next video, I will explain why it is actually so difficult for them to find the right victim, which is part of the reason why they always come back. A loving, high-value partner. But unfortunately, this is rarely the case. And yet, we're still willing to stay. And this is the explanation behind attachment styles. These are the attachment styles taking the best from us. Because part of us is still waiting, longing, and hoping for that relief, for the connection, for the version that we saw in the beginning of the relationship. And we long for that connection from way back in our lives. And yes, this is again connected to the attachment styles. Those famous patterns that we carry on all throughout our lives. But now we know better and we start connecting the dots, right? And here is where self-compassion becomes essential, because we didn't learn to love in a safe and consistent environment. We learned to love by adapting, by bending like a pretzel, by understanding, by staying with no healthy boundaries. And we also learn to love being a doormat, a people pleaser. But you know what? There is healing. And healing starts here. Healing starts with awareness, what we are doing, boundaries, limits, reconnection with ourselves, and leaning towards our feelings. Then we begin to notice what feels right, what doesn't, and what costs you so much. And slowly, we begin to choose ourselves. And we learn that happiness is that, remember, that internal alignment between what we value, what we do, and what we allow ourselves. And when those three things are aligned, even the simplest days feel full. We are not weak. You are not weak. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are someone who learned to love in a context where love was not always safe or consistent. And in the beginning of the abuse, the maltreatment and the manipulation are not immediately obvious. Remember the little frog metaphor? I will leave that video here in the suggestions, linked here, also at the end. Please, let's keep spreading this message. There are still so many people out there suffering in silence simply because we don't know what we don't know. Until these lessons finally reach them. Again, this understanding saved my life. That's why I'm so passionate about it. God, the providence, the higher power, the universe, they placed this lesson in my life in front of me, not once, twice. Because apparently, the first time, I didn't get it. Or I didn't fully see it. These individuals are master manipulators, but they are even better at selecting their victims. The selection process is not random for them, and that is the main reason they come back 99.99% of the time. In our next video, I will explain the details about the dynamic of they coming back. And remember, we cannot stop the wave, but together, certainly we could learn how to surf them. I'm the living proof that not only recovering, but thriving is possible. Remember, if you are going through manipulation, maltreatment, trauma, or abuse, and you're ready to take the next step, I'm a clinical professional counselor in the state of Florida. I still have some slots open. I receive most of the insurances in the state of Florida, and I'm offering a free 15 minutes consultation to see if we are a good fit to work together. Remember, we can't stop the waves. However, together, certainly we could learn how to, yes, that, to surf them. Ciao.